What's up, humans, and welcome to a new Psicoactivo. Happy Wednesday, everybody. Okay, so today we're going to talk about one of the first reactions and one of the first calls for action that Age of Disclosure has caused. And before I show you a message from Christopher Mellon, who is now the globes are off for him. He's directly calling for the US government to enact something, to do something about this. I do want to talk to you about a major issue that we cannot ignore when it comes to Age of Disclosure. And it's almost as if you talk about this, you're going to be regarded as maybe a debunker or a skeptic. It's not that. And if you're like a common sense human being, you know that when Edward Snowden did what he did, there were a lot of people involved in the spying of American people and people from other countries as well. And I'm obviously talking about General James Clapper, who was the director of national intelligence at some point, but he was also part of the Air Force. In the film, The Age of Disclosure, he makes a staggering statement about Area 51 and about operations that were being run by the United States Air Force over Area 51. That is a major statement, but we can't ignore the fact that James Clapper was also involved in very controversial aspects of the American government. The Edward Snowden case is one. The other one is the Hunter Biden laptop, which he was also a part of that cover up. So I know and I get why people have a problem with him being even part of Age of Disclosure. I was a little puzzled too that he was part of it because of what he's done in the past. And I know that there's already going to be people that don't agree with the take. I do think that we have to look at all the avenues, and there has to be. I mean, Dan Farah talks about morality in the interviews that he does, and he has somebody like Clapper as part of the 34 people that were on his film. That's a little incongruent. I don't know if you guys agree, but yeah, it was obviously going to happen that people were going to complain about this aspect of James Clapper. There's also Neil Brennan in there, who also did some questionable things in his career, and it's almost as if you couldn't talk about it, and I don't agree with that. Having said that, the revelation from James Clapper does come from a former director of national intelligence, and it does come from somebody who had a high senior position as a general in the United States Air Force. So that should also be taken into account. Having said that, I do want to show you guys a video that Christopher Mellon did, which clearly points towards the modus operandi that this entire effort is taking. So Mellon now is asking for the US government to call people who are currently sitting in their positions in the Air Force, the CIA, to testify under oath about these programs and about that statement from former DNI and former General James Clapper. I'm going to play you the clip. This comes from the Disclosure Foundation, and I want you to hear specifically what he's talking about. And just know this is also part of whatever strategy they have, obviously. And this is now the gloves off from Christopher Mellon, I think. But we can't ignore the glaring situation with Clapper and with Brennan and others in the film. That cannot be ignored. I'm telling you. So let's play Christopher Mellon's video for the Disclosure Foundation where he talks about this. Here it is.
My name is Chris Mellon. I spent approximately 20 years in the U.S. intelligence community, both in the Defense Department and on Capitol Hill with the Senate Intelligence Committee. The other day, I had the opportunity to see the new UAP documentary, Age of Disclosure. And after reflecting on it, I prepared a few remarks that I hope will be of assistance to Congress. In the new UAP documentary, Age of Disclosure, We learned that the Air Force had a secret program to track UAP in the vicinity of Area 51 and other sensitive military facilities in the 1990s. This report comes from none other than General James Clapper, former director of U.S. Air Force Intelligence and former director of National Intelligence.
Those positions alone, if he hadn't that issue with his past, with Snowden and with the laptop stuff, that alone should give you pause as to who is saying these things.
Does that secret Air Force UAP program continue to this day? Where is the data? What did the Air Force learn? Moreover, why is it that when Congress asked the services for UAP information in their possession in the 2020 Intelligence Authorization Bill, the Air Force denied having any pertinent information other than a handful of very recent innocuous reports submitted after DoD guidance was finally issued in 2020, requiring all military components to report UAP sightings? In my view, the Air Force brass treat Congress with contempt, even if not in a strictly illegal manner. I also believe that the secret Air Force UAP program described by General Clapper, or another like it, remains quietly active behind the scenes. I say this because it would explain a number of things. For example, why is it that Air Force F-22s, despite having greatly superior sensors, did not report UAP operating in DoD training areas off the East Coast when Navy F-18s were routinely detecting and reporting UAP on the same ranges? Why is it the USS Princeton radar data from the Nimitz case disappeared after U.S. Air Force officers visited the ship? In fact, there are many similar cases where Navy data was removed by U.S. Air Force personnel.
I can vouch for this because I've spoken to a couple of people who had incidents on board of these carriers. They also say that people from the Air Force arrived and took all the data right after the incident happened. I'm talking about sightings, and very recent ones at that. So presumably, those are, if you are familiar with the Men in Black lore, and you want to think that those are just humans, just agents dressed in black with black ties, black suit, everything. Presumably, these Men in Black could be part of AFOSI, the Air Force Office of Special Investigations.
Similarly, why are the Nimitz deck logs missing for precisely the period of Princeton UAP tracking back in 2004? Why is it the Air Force never reports UAP detected by its strategic radar systems? These solid-state phased array radars are believed to be the most powerful emitters on the planet. Yet despite their massive range and constant coverage, even when UAP are detected operating for days directly in front of these powerful emitters, the Air Force fails to issue any UAP reports. Why is it that none of the innumerable NORAD UAP intercept cases from recent decades were submitted with the 2021 UAP report to Congress, including the famous UAP case over the Bush Ranch in Texas, where F-16 pilots were made to sign NDAs by the Air Force? As recently as last year, the Air Force was still refusing to provide NORAD UAP intercept data to DoD's All-Domain Anomaly Resolution Office in Congress. Why are there no reports of UAP in space despite a massive U.S. Air Force space surveillance capability? Why is it that the Air Force seized Navy sonar data obtained after an encounter by a U.S. nuclear submarine with an underwater UAP? In sum, I believe the Air Force is treating Congress contemptuously when it comes to dodging formal congressional requests for Air Force UAP data. It seems likely the Air Force has either carefully marshaled all of its UAP data into an obscure, highly secret, quote, waived special access program that even the chair and ranking members of the intelligence committees are not cleared for, or that the Air Force is using Atomic Energy Act, or other authorities to justify concealing this UAP information. For example, the Air Force might claim they are merely the executive agent for CIA or the National Nuclear Security Agency, and that reporting of this data is therefore not their responsibility. Their counterpart agency might claim the reverse, leaving Congress uninformed as the, quote, deep state exploits a fissure in the current congressional military and intelligence reporting framework. Regardless, it is time for Congress to put the Chief of Staff of the U.S. Air Force, the Secretary of the Air Force, and the Director of the Air Force Office of Special Investigations under oath in a secure hearing room to get to the bottom line. Enough games. It is past time for the appropriate committees on the Hill to go directly to the source. While the Armed Services and/or DoD appropriations subcommittees confront the Air Force leadership, the intelligence committees can do their corresponding part by placing the CIA's Deputy Director for Science and Technology and Director of Operations under oath. The American people want and need the U.S. Air Force to be as effective and successful as possible in maintaining control of U.S. airspace and providing support to U.S. military personnel abroad.
So just to give you guys a little context, he didn't name names specifically, but he kind of did, didn't he? Because he named the U.S. Air Force Chief of Staff, he named the Secretary of the U.S. Air Force, he named the Executive Director, Air Force OSI, Office of Special Investigations, and he also named the CIA Deputy Director for Science and Technology. I'll give you the names. The U.S. Air Force Chief of Staff currently is General Kenneth S. Wilsbach. General Kenneth S. Wilsbach. The Secretary of the U.S. Air Force is Troy E. Mink, or Mink. Troy E. Mink. The Executive Director of the Air Force Office of Special Investigations is Pearl S. Munt. Pearl S. Munt. And the CIA Deputy Director for Science and Technology is called Don Mayricks. Don Mayricks. So those are the names. They're currently sitting in those positions. They should know. I wasn't that surprised that Christopher Mellon came out with the statement. I was surprised that he called for these people to testify under oath. And if there's going to be action taken right now, I would say we can't really waste any more time. Right now is the moment to do it, I think. I don't know what you guys think about this. I think that the Air Force is one of the entities that has been the most involved in all of this. History and evidence suggests so. If you guys see a bunch of debunkers or skeptics that seem to be working on an agenda, more than likely, at least a few of them are from AFOSI or former Air Force, and they currently run counter intel for the government. It's very obvious the people that might be involved in this within the UFO world is pretty obvious. Some of them even pose as UFO researchers, which they're not. They just pose as such. So, in light of what's been happening over the last couple of years with the drone incursions, I think this is a good moment to reflect on the piss poor job that the Air Force has been doing, on how silent they have been throughout this entire time. They're arguably one of the agencies that hasn't said a peep, really. They do have their whistleblowers who come from the Air Force, and they have been messed with quite a bit. I'm talking about Grush. I'm talking about Dylan Borland. I'm talking about Jake Barber, who's also former Air Force. They've all been messed with tremendously. So I think it's a good strategy, if you ask me. I don't know if you guys think the same, but let me know what you think. I'm going to leave the video Christopher Mellon posted in the description down below so you can watch the entirety of it. But let me know what you think about this. Mellon is now naming names of current people from the Air Force and the CIA so they can testify about this as a result of the film Age of Disclosure, which now sits at 94% on Rotten Tomatoes from the audience score and it's having a major impact in the mainstream. I've seen already interviews on Fox, ABC, NBC, CNN, Bill Maher, Joe Rogan, all talking about the same thing and getting the most coverage. There's a really cool The Guardian article too that is favorable towards the film. So the overall goal that the film had, which was to get the word out with people who didn't know about it, is working. The film is now number one on Amazon overall, like in the entire platform, they're number one. So the word is getting out. Now what we need is for President Trump to start considering about this plan. And what Christopher Mellon is doing here is only helping with the overall cause because he's now pointing towards the direction of somebody who would know about this and they can't testify under oath if they're subpoenaed. So let's see if it happens. What do you think will happen? And let me know what you think about Christopher Mellon's role in this entire operation overall. What do you think about him? Let me know in the comments. If you like the content you see, I'm going to ask you to like, share, hype, comment, subscribe, and hit the bell icon. That's all you need to do in order to help us, and it is what helps us the most. So thank you. But if you want to support us in other ways, there's a few links down there you can choose from. You can also become a member on YouTube, or you can support us through KGRA. Anything you choose to do is always appreciated, so thank you. That's it for me today on this video, but I'll see you guys in the next one. Remember, stay curious and inquisitive like Christopher Mellon. Always. Bye.